I want to take you back to retro gaming. Gaming nowadays, it sometimes feels lackluster, but why is that? You know, we have so many new games coming out, and why does it somewhat feel this way? Now, I use quotes, I guess, in the video title of retro, because there's a lot of different definitions that are tossed around for what retro gaming is. So to define retro gaming for this video, I'm going to be discussing the OG PlayStation, Xbox, N64, Super Nintendo, and even Xbox 360 and PS3. I know those aren't considered retro, but just for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to be including those in there. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this video. Before we jump into the video though, I will say this. Not all games are feeling lackluster or feeling not up to the same par that it used to feel like. A lot of people are saying like, it doesn't hit the same. It's different. I don't think every single game that's coming out right now doesn't feel that way. There's a lot of games that have been feeling fresh for me. Vermintide 2, surprisingly Battlefield 4 I've been playing a lot of, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then Escape from Tarkov. Those have been a lot of my go-to games lately. And there's a lot of games I'm excited for too, don't get me wrong. So Halo Infinite, Battlefield 2042, Back 4 Blood, Thunder Tier 1, Lord of the Rings Gollum. The Day Before looks pretty interesting. Excited to see some more on that, as well as Stalker 2, which isn't coming out until like April of 2022. So we got some time, got a lot of time for those new games that are coming out to get in before Stalker 2 drops. As a kid, there's a lot of things that are new to you. You know, you haven't experienced the plethora of the world or even the gaming world. And back in the 90s and early 2000s, gaming was drastically different than it is today. This leads into my childhood as a kid growing up in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So luckily for me, my dad, he was an avid gamer before I came around. So he would play, as my mom would say, they would both play Nintendo, and my dad would get so mad if my mom would beat him in Nintendo. He also fixes computers for a living, so being around technology at a young age, I was super blessed in that respect, where we always had like the top tier technology at the time, and I always had PC games that my dad would find on top of the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and the Nintendo 64 that we already had as well. That really shaped who I am today and the gamer that I am today. From 99 to 2003, I would play quite a bit of Mario, Super Mario, Mario Kart, Comanche, the Army Men games from 3DO, Command & Conquer Renegade, Age of Empires 2, Lego Racers, BMX racing games, and then Operation Flashpoint. Until one day, I'll never forget being told that my dad found a new job and that we'd be moving 2 hours away. Before we officially moved, my dad would commute 4 hours each day, so he'd drive 2 hours and then 2 hours back. He would go to this local video rental store that was right by his work, and he would stop there and rent some games, and they had all kinds of games there that he would come back with. He usually rent, you know, 1 or 2, and you could get them for I think like 7 days at the time, which was awesome. One game in particular he rented for me that stuck with me all these years that I continuously think of, and it's a game called Enter the Matrix. If you don't know what that game is, it's based off of the movies of The Matrix, which is like a computer generated simulation where everybody's basically in a simulation. If you haven't seen it, you need to just go look on YouTube, a trailer. I'll probably have something in the background going of like Neo doing some crazy shit. Let's take a look. That's pretty cool. When we moved, I didn't have many friends right away. I mean, normally that's how it goes, you know, but that game I would play like no other because I consistently would rent it. I didn't have enough money to buy it. I think my dad knew that I liked The Matrix, obviously, because we watched the movie together. So I think he wanted to help me out in some way to with the mentality of the move. That game was so much fun. The slow motion, running up walls, taking out enemies like you're just in the movie. I felt like I was in control of a true badass, or that like I was becoming this true badass that could do all these slow-mo things. The point I'm trying to make with all of this is that I would get extremely excited as a kid about these games that my dad would bring home for me to try, whether it be literally anything my dad thought was interesting. He would come back and he knew my interests. You know, I was super into military stuff, super into shooters, so he would get games, you know, that kind of paired with that. It was the wonder and the awe that different games had that were out there to play, since I didn't truly know what games are out there unless we went into a store. Which brings me to the box. The box art is really interesting. It has something on it to catch your eye, right? And it's no different than what you see on Steam, Epic, Origin, EA Play, Ubisoft, blah, 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 you know, all of them. There needs to be an eye catcher of something to grab you or make you want to pick up that box in the store, take a look at it, or click that link and see what the game's about. The digital age allows us to see those trailers for the game right on the store page though. So that makes it really easy to make an educated decision on if that's a game that you want to get or not. However, obviously I'm sure you all know, before the digital age was everywhere, we had to get that box that had the game in it. The cool part about that was the physically holding it in the store. There's something magical as a kid, you know, where you're picking it up and you're looking at it and like, this looks awesome, I want to play it. What made gaming back then was the simplicity of buying a game, I think, and playing it instantly. The disc would go on the console, all you do is play the game. Now, I mean, I did grow up playing PC games, don't get me wrong, so I would have to download them, and some of the games like Battlefield, Vietnam, and like Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth 2, World of Warcraft all came with like 5 or 6 discs each to try and download, like anywhere from 4 to 6 discs. Insane. With the digital age, it feels kind of lackluster to me when you buy a game, you know, like, there's something about the physical copy to me personally, and the digital age has made it incredibly easy to buy those games, to refund them, and like I said earlier, kind of make an educated decision on what games to get because of the amount of information that's available. I wouldn't trade that for anything though. Like, it's incredibly nice to have all of this information at your fingertips and to be able to make a educated decision on what game you want to get. I totally agree with that. And if you don't like it, you have the opportunity to refund games depending on what service you're using. But one of the things that I miss the most are the midnight releases for games. Now, I only went to one midnight release, and I wish that I could have went to more, but I went to the Modern Warfare 2 midnight launch. They had a push-up and sit-up contest while we were waiting in line, and I ended up winning the push-up contest and won $30 in gift cards to GameStop, which is awesome. Thank you, football. Keeping me in shape. There was nothing better than being around all of your friends, waiting in line for a game that everyone is excited about, and being in an experience where the entire line is obviously excited about this game since they're willing to stay up till midnight to get a copy of said game. There's not really much of that anymore, which is kind of sad, you know, but I still hold those memories near and dear to my heart. But with all these physical copies of games and its popularity, this kind of led to my next point that I wanted to talk about. Pre-streets. So for those of you that don't know, the video rental stores typically will get video games and movies typically the weekend before it's released to the public. Now, I don't know much about movies. Now, for games, they usually release them on a Tuesday. So usually these video game rental stores will get them on like a Thursday or a Friday. Now, I had an in. My brother-in-law worked at a local video rental store, and he was able to get me a pre-street. So I would go to his video rental store. He'd be like, hey, got this game for you. I got Gears of War 3. I got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I got Call of Duty World at War. Like, all these games that weren't released to the public yet, I was able to play. And as a kid, man, like a middle schooler, high schooler, it was awesome. I became like the popular kid because people would see me on Xbox Live playing a game that wasn't even released yet to the general public, and everyone was like, how'd you get your hands on this, you know? And it was really fun to kind of give people like a little bit of an idea of like, yeah, dude, this game does this, you can do this in the new generation of this Gears of War game, blah blah blah, you know. But what we're seeing now, instead of that pre-street where the physical copy was in store, is that you're seeing this like premium pay option where people are able to either, whether it be pre-ordering a game, whether like Battlefield 2042, you can pre-order the game and get early access to their open beta. That's not early access to the actual game launch, but there are games like MLB The Show is the one I can think of off the top of my head, where they allowed you to have 4-day early access to games if you have a certain edition of the game, and it's a higher premium than like the regular $60 edition. And that goes the same with the other games that are out there that EA develops. So I know EA has a system where if you pre-order some of their games or you pay a higher premium, they'll let you get into the game a little bit earlier. So we're seeing that now as almost like a digital pre-street in a way, which is very bizarre compared to, you know, what we had in the physical copy age, where it was like you had to have the copy in order to play it, because otherwise you wouldn't get that early access, which leads into my next point. Early access games. They've become really popular as it allows a couple of things to happen. So the first point that I want to make is it allows all types of developers to get funding for a game they are still currently working on. The second one is it gives developers feedback on their game while also receiving income, and sometimes gives the community a voice. And then 3, allows consumers to pay a lower price for a game compared to when it fully releases. So comparing this to the past with older games, this was not the case, right? We didn't have Cyberpunk 2077 coming out and feeling like it was not finished, or that it wasn't being recommended for the console of a previous generation to be played on, or even the fact that they wouldn't even release it on previous consoles necessarily. I know we saw that with the Xbox One and the 360, where the very early ages we would see it be released and the game was functional. The graphics were just very much downgraded compared to other copies. Same with Call of Duty. You would get a game like the modern Call of Duty, the content is being released every couple of months. Sure, we get the expansion packs, like perfect example, Call of Duty 1 and then Call of Duty United Offensive was the expansion pack. They used to do that as a standard, where it would be a full-fledged game and then expansion packs later on. Now we're seeing a shift, right, over the last 15-20 years that shifted to content flowing consistently throughout the time that the game is out to allow it more players, more money for the developer, and hopefully keep the interest of the players to keep that economy within the game driving. And what you're seeing because of that is a lot of companies are dipping on games that don't do well. EA's Anthem is a great example where they barely put any effort into keeping that game afloat after they realized it was flopping as hard as it was. So it's almost easier for them to just cut their losses rather than put time into a game and hope that it does better that they put their time on. I mean, I really think game developers need to see that as a, hey, our name is on the front of this game. Like, our development company is right on here and our publisher is right on here, and yet we're just going to abandon the game. Like, I feel like there needs to be some ownership on the development team, the publisher, and show, hey, you guys have your name on this game. Like, you need to own up to it and hopefully improve it. Does anyone get the feeling of running out of content quickly in like some of these modern games and wishing that there was more content in the games that you have right off the bat? Because that's how I feel with some of the games. One of my worries is that how little content typically comes out in games up front. Now, is this a problem? I mean, it really depends on who you ask. For me, most of the content has been free compared to the past where you're spending like $100 and $120 for like their premium passes and things like that. Like the Battlefields of the past. I know Ubisoft is still kind of doing that with their gold editions of games, or like their higher premium, versus EA and Activision seem to have kind of moved to this free with battle passes enabled. So as far as gaming moving forward, I think it's fine as long as we understand that this isn't something that's going to go away and it's going to be sticking around, unfortunately. I don't think I have an issue with this if they advertise their games to be early access as well. So for example, I know some games, or most games, are typically saying, hey, we're an early access game, like on Steam. However, I think a lot of AAA developed games are coming out and they're honestly early access games with how much content is in them. And then there's that argument of what is considered early access. You know, I think that when Warzone first dropped, it was a great idea, but then you could see as it went on, their ideas weren't fully flushed out and they were just pushing these things out and then letting us, the consumer, be their beta tester, but I'll have more on that in a bit. The last point I want to make here is the money versus time argument as well. So we're seeing a lot of games pushing that battle pass. You can either pay the fee to get access to it, or you can grind it out. The problem I have is a lot of the battle pass unlock system is it's a big grind, especially if there are weapon systems in there like Call of Duty Warzone, where they are the meta. Everyone wants to use it. It's easy for people to just pay for it, which is fine. That's your right to do it. That's part of what the game developers have come up with as a system, and I think it's allowed to be used. I don't think it's something to necessarily complain about. I think the issue is the amount of time that is needed in order to play for those. You know, I personally am more of a variety gamer, and I have a lot of problems with trying to just grind one game out consistently. It's hard for me to hold an interest on certain games to do that every single day, day in, day out. And I think it's rather frustrating when those are your options, is to either pay a price or to put a lot of time into the game in order to actually get what you want to get out of it. So getting back to that point, we've really become the beta testers for a lot of games now. Gaming companies are realizing they can release games that are not finished and release content out to the public, get their feedback, and then make changes based off of that feedback, rather than just having a small sample group of beta testers testing out the game. They have that large pool to make changes and collect data from, and it's the perfect example for what games are kind of doing right now. Call of Duty Warzone, the amount of weapon systems dropped in this game, the lack of balancing and issues with hackers and glitches were incredibly high. The hacker count is still pretty high. I know they're working on it, and there's always seems to be a new glitch, which I get, like that's going to happen with games, but I think the thing in my head, at least, and I think a lot of gamers' heads, is that you have a game company that's making billions of dollars, and it seems like they aren't putting their best foot forward in a game that they're making so much money on, that you would hope that they would put more time and effort into trying to find these things in order for it to be a better holistic experience for the gamer. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Look, there's a lot to be said. Everyone has an opinion. Obviously, this video is very opinion-based for me, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so please let me know. But what makes these things challenging is that I know some of you may have a comment all prepped and ready to be sent right now to dismantle some of my arguments. That's fine. But it's also my opinion. Keep that in mind, and it's the experience that I've gained from gaming over the last 23 years of my life. What I really want to see is I want to see originality, a push to make games better, and a push to want to be successful by some of these big gaming companies, rather than sticking to the status quo. Success is in not the amount of money you can make, but the quality of game they have their logo on. The days of NHL 2K and EA NHL pushing against each other, trying to improve, when WoW was creating such unique experiences and working against Guild Wars, when Call of Duty and Battlefield were pushing to be the next best first-person shooter, all this competition always helps make games better. Because I don't want games to become what FIFA, Madden, and NHL have become, where it feels like a complete similar or reskin of the previous 3 to 4 games. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts below. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them, and I'll try and get to them, all right? Have a good one. Take it easy. Stay safe out there. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.